Hello, everyone. Welcome from Stuck to Strong. It's Big Dave here, and we're on to another episode. This one is a good one, like all of them. It's all about triggers and tools. And why that's so important is that one, you need to know when you're triggered. And then two, you need to know what tools to use so that when you do get triggered, you don't actually act differently than what you want to, meaning that your emotions just don't take over. So this is the how-to section of all of this. And I don't have enough time to get into that big a detail on this, but it's going to be enough so that you learn it. And if you want to know more, just comment, ask me what you want to know more about, and I can make podcasts exactly for those details of what you're looking for, because there's so many of them. But this one's all about your triggers and your tools and how to make sure you become experts at understanding how to use it for yourself. Remember, we started with identity. Once you accept yourself, then awareness can come in. You're not living some false reality. You're not believing something that's fake. Then you can become aware. Now, when you're aware of it, remember the part I talked about before, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Overwhelming in such a way that you start to feel bad about yourself, or you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm this way. And you got to get over that and say, all right, this is good. Now I can be aware of I'm doing this. So I can now start to create new habits so I can get the results I'm after rather than these old habits always getting in my way. It's a really important point here that once you go through and do your acceptance of who you are, your identity, then awareness, now this. And this is the heart and soul of what you do. And it's extremely difficult, but very doable. And remember that all this is about being very practical with yourself. We're not changing who you are. We're changing what you do. Not who you are, what you do. Thoughts, right? Your thoughts control your actions. Your action controls your results. So what we're trying to do is make sure we start with that thought, have it be what we want it to be. So our actions the way we want it to be so we get the result that we want. That's how we're going through this. And to break it down further, our end goal is quite simply this. We want to change your behaviors based upon your triggers so that we give you the tools to accomplish the first goal of changing your behaviors. And again, this could be anything: improving a relationship, losing weight, building a business, starting a business, wanting to get a deeper connection with a friend. All of it has the same thing as to what you're after. Or maybe you don't have any friends and you want to just learn how to get more friends. All of this really becomes, all right, the tool to what you use, but only after you identified and accepted who you are and you become aware of the things you're doing that you didn't think you did. And then now you can use this. All right, enough of all that. Let's begin. We have to be honest as we begin this whole journey. When you are going to change your habit, your behavior, that's hard. Because, man, are we dug in. It's almost instinctual within us that a lot of these habits we do without thought. We haven't even given a thought. We just do it. And think about how powerful that is. That's why the awareness is so important. Only when you become aware of yourself can you start identifying when you're doing it to yourself. And that's the complication of making sure where people like, I tried this and it didn't work. No, you never became aware of what your deficiencies were. You actually used your deficiencies and think that they're positives and they're not. Where if you take a deficiency, become aware of it, and then use tools, now you turn that deficiency into a good weapon to change your results. So it's one of those confusing things that the awareness is difficult to identify, but using the tools correctly is even more difficult to do. So this is tough. But worth it, so worth it. And again, remember, we start small. We want to get to here. It's okay if we go from here to here to here. And what I'm doing is, if you can't see me, moving my hand very little, inches Inch by inch, life is a cinch. Mile by mile, it might take a while. So remember that. We're going to take these slow steps forward, and that's all we're after. We're not looking for perfection ever. We're only looking for slight improvements and getting better one little step at a time, because that's what lasting change is. It doesn't just happen overnight. All right, when we move on, and before we move on, remember that we're not trying to change who you are. We're not breaking your habits. We're changing them. Big difference. Big difference. And once you understand that, you can start habit stacking. And then that's when your results really start to improve, because now you become accustomed to brand new habits. All right, it all begins with triggers. Triggers are, man, your worst enemy. They really do suck, but they're everywhere. You know, I can tell you from a personal thing for me on the weight loss journey, I had so many triggers all over the place, and sometimes you just still do. It's noon. I want to eat. I'm not even hungry. Why do I want to eat? Or all of a sudden I get 5 minutes of some downtime and I want to eat. I'm not hungry. These are all triggers, right? Maybe yours is you go to the kitchen at 9 o'clock at night and you're like, you want your ice cream. You're not hungry, but you want it. See, these are all different triggers. Now you can also have things happen to, say, a customer complains. That customer complaint seems to you very disrespectful because of all the hard work and everything you've done to build that company. Now they just complain over something that's really stupid, and that's a trigger. But see, all these things trigger you emotionally, and emotionally leads you to do things out of just habit without thought. And we have these wonderful brains that can actually stop that. But we got to learn how to use them, because it all becomes instinctual. So a trigger can be something so simple and so non-identifiable, and it's just something you're used to. That's a habit, right? That's where the habits come in. So how do you understand triggers? Well, let's just talk about the examples I just used. It could be time of day. It could be a place. It could be a feeling you get, a person. Maybe you meet someone and get a feeling, and that triggers you because it reminds you of something or someone of something they did to you before. And since it reminded you of that, you're going to read that person or treat them like crap because the person that it reminds you of was maybe dirty or bad to you or disrespectful or something like that. Or a smell. Maybe all of a sudden you have a smell and then it triggers you and you get sick to your stomach because it reminded you of something else. See, all these things are triggers that happen all the time. And our bodies, our habits just do it. That's how powerful these triggers are emotionally in our mind. You know, heck, even a sound can do it. Maybe you hear a sound somewhere and all of a sudden now you're on edge because you heard some sound and that has now something happened that it frightened you before. So now you're frightened or you're on edge or you're pissed. All from a sound. Yeah, that happens all the time to people. But it's because we let it happen to ourselves. Once we get in control of our minds, we can get in control of our bodies. Now, again, when I say this, I'm going to tell you this 100% of the time, that this isn't something that if you hear a sound or you have a smell that triggers you, then all of a sudden I said these words to you and boom, it's fixed. That doesn't work this way. No, let's just say maybe it happens 10 times a month. And if we can get it that you only reacted 9 times a month and you didn't react once, that's a win. Next month, let's go that you only react 8. Next month, 7. See, these are small wins that we're getting there. And I don't know if you may ever get past 50-50. Maybe you will. And if you do, that's awesome. But let's set expectations. If you can get to 50-50 of these triggers where you're aware of them, and you didn't react, what happened is you didn't react, so that's powerful, and now you're acting the way that you want to. Thus, 50% more of the time you're winning the way you want to. The other 50% you can catch yourself, apologize, and do nothing. Still pretty good, right? So there's always a ways and power that comes with awareness. Once you know and you're aware of a trigger is where the whole part of using your mind becomes so powerful. And the power within this, understanding what triggers you, is really coming in that you're triggered now, and you may have what the, and then you catch yourself. Or you may all of a sudden have one scoop of ice cream in your mouth and you're like, oh crap, I'm not even hungry. Any of these things could happen. So what do you do? At that point, what you do is change your reaction. That's what you do. Now, how do you change your reaction? Well, there's all different ways of changing reactions that might work for you. Like simply, if the ice cream's in your mouth, you say, you put it back, throw it away, throw it on the sink, something, and you don't eat it until you're hungry. Or you just don't eat it because you shouldn't be eating the ice cream if that's something that you're working on with losing weight. One of the most powerful things that you can do that gives you time in the beginning is once you are aware and you're triggered, just pause. Just pause. A deep breath may work, but just pause. If you do a pause and a deep breath, it gives you time to capture your thoughts as to what's really going on. And that pause is like a secret weapon because now you can sit there and say, wait a second. I want to swap out this habit. I want to swap out this behavior. I don't like it that I was going to go and automatically do that. Like, for instance, as a customer is complaining and you're getting pissed. Well, how do you change that? You change that by saying, I'm going to change my reaction. And how do you change your reaction is by your thoughts. Instead of getting pissed, you say, well, why am I getting mad? They had an experience they're not happy with, and they're just sharing it with me, and I should not get so offended by that. Why am I getting offended by that? Or you can sit there and say something like, all right, I know this happens. I'm just going to let it go and not worry about it, and we'll be fine. I mean, there's all different ways you can attack it, but you can use those two variances to what makes sense to you within your business. If you're eating ice cream, you could just take it down and throw it away and say, I'm not going to eat till I'm hungry, or change it out for some raspberries and don't eat the ice cream. So you get my point is now you're changing it out. You're just doing something about it. You're just not going and doing it. And maybe what you change it out for isn't exactly what you want, but you're changing it, so that's an improvement. You should be happy with yourself because next time you'll get even closer to the result that you're after. Because when you start to capture yourself, everything may not go right the first time and right away, but you want to change and reverse that thought. Like some of the things that I use as examples are when people are going, why the hell did I do that? And you're beating yourself up, stop and go, hang on, I'm human. I made a mistake. I'm all right, I'm not going to get upset over this. So what's the best way to handle it? And you're saying this in your head, and then you handle it. And you'll know that answer because as soon as you get that emotion to calm down, that answer will be right there. One that might sit really well with all of you is the next time you sit down and you start scrolling social media and you get lost in the TikTok algorithm. It could be even you flipped one up and you're like, oh crap, I'm just out of habit on TikTok. I'm out of habit on Facebook. I'm out of habit on Instagram. I'm out of habit on Snapchat. Just set your phone down and go for a walk without the phone. Change your behavior. But awareness is where it comes. Change your behavior. That's the key. Don't let yourself just get stuck there for hours scrolling and waste your time. Change your behavior. You may just say, no, I am not going to do this. I'm going to do something productive. And that's the thought you have. And you reverse that whole thing of I'm going to get lost in social media to, no, I'm going to do something productive. And then you go do something productive. That's changing that behavior. And then you change the behavior, you change the result. Another thing that can really help some people is change the environment, because sometimes maybe the environment is not good for you. And the environment can be many things. It could be maybe you are officed by someone that is just always triggering you. Maybe there's a way you can move offices, or maybe there's a way you can move a cubicle to somewhere else, or maybe there's a different building you can go to, or maybe you can work from home. Maybe in the environment of say, like weight loss, you clean out all the crap foods and you don't even have them in your house and you don't ever buy them in the grocery store. And if you accidentally put them in the cart before you get to the checkout, you take them and you put them outside the cart so you don't buy it. And inside the house, there are none. change the environment. So sometimes the environment needs to be changed in order for you to start really becoming aware and capturing and changing it, because maybe the triggers are too much. So environment is another way that you can use in order to change your behavior, change your environment. Now, that doesn't necessarily fix everything, because you can now still go to Krispy Kreme and buy a donut, or to McDonald's and buy something, or to 7-Eleven and buy candy. But it makes it a lot harder. And now you have all that time to pause and catch your trigger. So it only helps with the environment. It only helps. But again, it still comes down to you identifying yourself as accepting who you are, becoming aware, and then taking that time to go, no, I'm driving to 7-Eleven to get something I shouldn't. I'm not gonna. It gives you that time. So in all ways, changing the environment can help. If you can't change the environment, then you have to learn to deal with it the best you can. And remember, we're talking about little jumps of improvement. So as long as you put your perspective hat on correctly, you'll keep going through. But if all of a sudden you just don't put the perspective hat on and you just let yourself get too frustrated, it won't work, and you'll be like, screw this shit, and you'll be done with it. Now, here's a tricky one, because we're all so different. Like, some people need other people. Some people like to do things on their own journey. Some people need other people to help them. And if you're one of those, you got to get some accountability friends. Find people who are going to hold you accountable. Go, are you doing this? Is this what you're doing? All right, I'll do it with you, or any of those things. If you're not like that, you have to hold yourself very accountable. So when you do mess up, make sure you're telling yourself you messed up and that you're not going to do that again, because it's hindering your progress. Right? Yeah. Accountability is everything in this for our behaviors. We are accountable for our own actions, regardless of what someone else does. We're accountable for that. Just make sure it's your choice of what you wanted to do rather than a reaction. And that's the key to all of this. And the part that I really want to summarize here at the end is, too many times I see and hear people really talk about they're broken, or they don't have willpower, or they wish they were somebody else. All those things mean you haven't accepted yourself. We're all got flaws. But because you're broken don't mean anything to do that you're not getting the results. Because we're all a bit broken. We all got issues. We all got things that we do. The difference between success and no success is action, and action comes from your thoughts. Thoughts control your actions. Action controls your results. So don't skip these steps. Become awareness. And if it's only one section you're aware of that you identified that you're accepting, that's fine. Even though there may be this false side on the other 3/4, but a quarter you got right, attack that quarter, because you know that's who you are. Now start attacking that and start to improve. What happens is, once you start working on that, you start to see further and start to see more. So you'll end up where you want to be anyway. But what you got to do is know that it's not about your willpower. It's about your thoughts. It's about your habits. It's about using these tools we talked about today. These tools hold all of the power within your mind, which means you have the power and you have the choice to change at any given time you wish, for both the positive and the negative, because it works for either one. The negative just seems to be a hell of a lot easier than the positive. Once you understand and comprehend and start to use these tools to help you with your triggers, you start to really master what I call life. The wonderful parts of life. And I don't mean that by perfection. I mean that by enjoyment. Because all of a sudden, things don't bother you the same. Not the same level. You still care and love the same, but you're not judging so much. You're not necessarily reacting so much. You're taking the time to understand and to care. and think through it before you react. So as I sign off on this podcast episode, remember, you're not failing in life. You're learning. Identify your triggers. Be aware of them. Use the tools and start to change your habits and behaviors. And man, oh man, will you like what happens next. But you got to stick with it. So many times people just go and do this for a month or two and then they're done. It's like a book of a month thing. No, you have to stick with this. It's a constant thing you're working on all the time of catching yourself. And yeah, you might have 20 habits. You got new habits that you've identified that now you got to do. Yes, you got to do them. So do them. All right, everyone, until next time, this has been Big Dave. Great talking to you, and I am sure I'll hear from you on the next podcast. We'll see you.